Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our panel today. We hope you find it interesting and insightful. I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Steve Blankenship, the Principal Product Manager for Chef Infra, Chef Desktop, and Chef Application Delivery. And with me, I have Chaitra.
Hey everyone. I'm Chaitra Mailankodi. I'm a product manager at Progress Chef, and I'm responsible for Chef Desktop and Chef App Delivery. And we have Shubham Chaudhary from Tata Elxsi with us. Shubham, why don't you introduce yourself and talk about your organization and your primary use case with Chef?
Hello. It's good to be here. My name is Shubham, and I'm working as a system administrator in Tata Elxsi for past 1.5 years. Tata Elxsi is a design company with offices spread across 5 different states. So the head office is in Bangalore. The other offices are in Pune, Chennai, Trivandrum. So I look after the servers here, mostly the ERP servers on which our ERP application is running on. I also look after the desktops, which most of the employees are using here, the employees as well as developers. I came across Chef during COVID time because at that time, security became a primary concern. Security as well as central management of our systems became a primary concern for us. So we were looking for a tool that can help us to give us a better visibility across our systems, which are in use by the employees who have taken them to their home and have been working from home with them. So we wanted to have a tool that could help us to gain that visibility. So we thought of using Chef, and we have been using Chef for quite some time now. And we have around somewhat 300 nodes on our Chef. These nodes are primarily user desktops and laptops, which users have taken to their home. Some might be in office, but most of them are at home.
Thanks a lot. I'm sure we all appreciate you joining. I certainly do. One of the things I was wondering as you were talking about your use case is what were you doing prior to discovering Chef? How were you managing everything? How was everything working out for you?
Well, Stephen, it was a bit difficult for us prior to using Chef because we were dependent on writing manual scripts. Our scripts were pretty long and were difficult to understand. The reason why is we have multiple teams spread across different offices. So if a person who was writing a script for one particular configuration, it doesn't make sure that the other person or the other team will be able to understand the script that has been written by the other team. So we were getting into a lot of errors or misconfiguration. There were no consistency across our systems. There was less visibility on our nodes as well.
So what was your criteria for choosing a tool for managing your fleet? So if you could state some of your top criteria from a use case perspective, that would be great.
Well, Chaitra, there were three requirements that we had. The first one was as I said, that Tata Elxsi had 4 or 5 offices spread across different states, and we had 3 or 4 teams who were managing the systems at their respective locations. So collaboration was a bit difficult between us. The head office is at Bangalore, the other offices are at Chennai. So the teams who were at Chennai they were maintaining the systems on their own. There was very less communication between that team and the team who was at Bangalore. So there was no consistency across the systems which were at Bangalore and compared to systems which were at other locations. So we wanted something to give us that consistency. Whatever processes that we have defined at the head location, we wanted to make sure that the same processes could be followed at other locations as well. So collaboration was a bit difficult at that time. Also, if I was writing the script, the other team, there was no way of knowing that the other team was following the correct procedure or the measure or the configuration that we had defined or that we have in place. The second requirement was the gaining a better visibility on our nodes. We had some existing tools in place, which provided not that great visibility. That tool was primarily designed for Windows. For Linux, we wanted to look for a tool that would have given us a much greater visibility on our Linux nodes. So visibility is just one thing. If my nodes are visible to me, then only I can prepare them, or then only I can do some configuration on them. So the second requirement was the visibility, and the visibility started to get worse when the COVID started because we have no way of knowing where our systems were. The third requirement that we had as a company was security. I think that's the most primary concern for every other company out there. We didn't even know, honestly, we didn't even know the definition of security until we came across Chef. The reason why, because Chef provides these pre-curated benchmarking profiles that I can use to benchmark my systems. There are these CIS benchmarking profiles that I can run against my system, and I can make my system automatically secure. There is a lot of work, a lot of manual work that is reduced when I'm using Chef. So these were the three primary requirements that we had.
Got it. And how many Linux desktops are you managing today with Chef?
We have somewhat around 300 desktops.
Okay.
Some of them are laptops. So we are adding some more systems on a daily basis as well.
And I believe these desktops are like Linux desktops are mostly developer workstations?
Yes, these are the developer workstations as well as the laptops which are in use by the employees, which may or may not be a developer.
Okay.
So you touched on a couple of key points in your process for rolling something out. I was wondering if you could talk about what were the things that made you specifically choose Chef? What were the points that you said, okay, Chef has to be the thing that we're going to use, and we're going to take that up and deploy it going forward?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first point that I think I have spoken here about is collaboration. Chef make collaboration very easy. With Chef, I can be sure that the other teams in other locations are following the procedures that I have defined in cookbooks, in Chef itself. So with Chef, I can sleep easy, or I can sleep better at night knowing that my systems or whatever configuration that I've written is consistent across all those locations.
Yeah. Yeah, that we found that's important for pretty much everybody that uses the solution.
Also, Chef provides a very good visibility on our systems. Earlier, we had very less visibility on our Linux systems, but with using Chef, I can see on the screen how my systems are doing. If there is any configuration mismatch, or if the system does not have the required components installed on it, Chef will notify me that in the client runs, I can get the status on Chef Automate screen. So I have all the information that I need in just one place.
Right. Wouldn't be great automation if you didn't.
So how did you go about learning Chef, and how did you do that?
Well, prior to using Chef, our company was mostly dependent on other configuration management tools. We had Ansible in place. We also have Manage Engine that was primarily used for Windows. So I had the idea on how configuration management works when I was using Ansible. But Ansible had one particular limitation because it's not agent-based, and I have no control over systems who are outside my office network. So we needed something that is agent-based and provide much of the configuration functionality that Ansible provide. That was the initial idea. So when we started out on internet looking for other configuration management tools, we came across Chef. We started going through it, and first we read the documentation itself. We wanted to do some R&D on our own, so we installed Chef. We set up the test kitchen. wrote our own cookbooks by reading the documentation on Chef. It's a pretty good documentation. We had no trouble in going through the documentation because it's very comprehensive. So we had set up test kitchen. We wrote the cookbooks ourselves, and we tried to see how it works, whether it's exactly what we are looking for. As we were trying out Chef and we were testing it, we came to know that it's pretty amazing software, and it has all the requirements. I mean, it is meeting all the requirements that we have as a company. So that's how we started. Primarily, we were just using Test Kitchen. Then we wanted to go more in depth. So we registered for some courses on Udemy about Chef. So there we get to learn about how we write the cookbooks, and how cookbooks are evaluated, and how they are executed against these systems. So that part was really easy. Then we started. Then we have deployed the system in our on-premise deployment we have done. So that's how we started out with Chef.
Got it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You were able to find information on Udemy. We are constantly discovering the community actually contributing significant amounts of training and documentation. So that's always nice to hear.
Yeah. And so how are you using Chef to manage your fleet? Like, would it be possible for you to, show some use cases that you're solving with Chef in your organization?
Yes, I'll show you one particular demo where we'll go through the recipe that I've written for this demo. So let me just share a screen. So here, what I'm going to do is most of the day-to-day task of a system administrator is the installation and configuration of softwares across any system that I'm managing. So in this demo, I'm going to show you how how Chef makes it really easy for system admins like me to install and configure the software on any system. It can be a desktop or even a laptop. So the software that I'm going to configure here is called the USB guard. As the name suggests, that with the USB guard, I can configure which USB devices are authorized to be used on my system. So with Chef, I can control the entire functionality of USB guard, and I can also control what devices can be connected to the system. So let's just take a quick look at the recipe file for this USB guard package. This is the recipe file, and here I am using the predefined objects, which are called resources. I have 4 resources here in this recipe. As you can see, there's the package resource at the very beginning. It says package USB guard. Now, this resource helps me to install any software that I want on my system. Now, imagine if I had to do this via writing script or any other code, I would have to take into account the underlying package manager on which I will be executing the script against. For example, in Ubuntu, we have the apt package manager, and on CentOS, I have the RPM package manager. With using package resource, I don't actually have to define what package manager I have to use. It will automatically figure out that it has to use the apt package manager when the recipe is getting executed on a Ubuntu system. And it will automatically also figure out that it has to use RPM or Yum package manager when it's trying to install something on a CentOS operating system. Now, this in 4 lines of code, I am installing the software without providing the logic of identifying the package manager. If I had to do this in a script, the lines of code will be much more compared to what I have written here. Now I have the template resource as well, as I can see in the highlighted section. This is the most interesting resource in this recipe here. Now it allows me to read any configuration which I have defined for a particular node. I can read that information and I can generate a configuration file based on the information that I have read. Now, if you look at the template definition here, you will see one line that says allowed USB, and there's an arrow and it starts with node allowed USB. That allowed USB here is the attribute which I have defined for one particular node here. I will be executing this recipe against one node that has this allowed USB attribute defined, and it will consist of the USBs that I have whitelisted for this particular system. So what it will do is it will read the USB IDs that I have populated in the allowed USB attribute, and then it will read that information and it will generate a configuration file that starts with rules.conf file, and it will be read by the USB guard daemon to generate to enforce the security policy on the system. Now, imagine if I had to do the same thing via writing script. I would have to write so much code for reading data from an external source and then generating a configuration file. With Chef resource, specifically template resource, it makes so much easy to do that. The other two resources are pretty self-explanatory. It's the directory resource. It allows me to create any directory. Here I'm creating the USB guard directory where I can place the configuration file, and I want to make sure that it's owned by root user. And the last resource that I have in this recipe is the service resource. So with service resource, I can restart any particular system service that I have. So here I'm going to just restart the USB guard daemon, and I'm going to enable it. This is the Chef Automate screen that I have here. Now, as I said, we have one attribute on which I will be populating USB IDs. So this is the node page, and I am going to edit the allowed USB attribute, and I'm going to populate this attribute with the USB IDs that I want to whitelist on my system. So let's just add one device. Let's say a developer is working on a development board, and this is the device ID. Let's add one more device. Okay, it looks okay now. Let's just save it. And we'll go back to our session here. So what I have here is one node which I will be connecting to via Kitchen. So Kitchen is another useful tool when I want to test my cookbooks. So with the help of Kitchen, I will log into my node here. Okay, we have logged in. And let's just execute the Chef client here. What Chef client will do is it will read the recipe file that I have written, and it will run the recipe code against this system. It will install the USB guard daemon, and it will configure it based on the attribute that I have just defined in the Chef Automate screen. And that's it. So let's just run sudo chef client here. Okay, so we can see that it has started, and we can see the Chef client version, it's 17. And as we can see that it has started reading the recipe, and it is referring to the resource that we have defined. That is, it's installing the USB guard daemon by using the apt package manager. I think it will take a minute to install. Now, nowhere in the recipe I had written that APT package manager should be used. Chef was smart enough to identify that I am running the recipe in a Debian-based system. So it will automatically identify that it should use the APT package manager to install the USB guard software. Okay, it's done. And okay. So USB guard is installed. We can see in the output, and we can also see that the template resource has executed, and it has generated the rules.conf file. There is the configuration file for USB guard daemon, and it has also read the USB devices which I had written in the attribute for this node in Chef Automate. And the service, USB guard service, has been restarted and it's enabled. The Chef client was successful. This is how Chef helps us in installing and configuring one particular software. In this case, okay, let's just take a look at the rules.conf file that has been generated with the template resource. And yes, we can see that these are the USB IDs, which we had written in the attributes section of this node. But this was just one simple use case of installing and configuring USB guard daemon. In real case, in real scenarios, there could be 100 or more than 100 packages across different systems which are to be installed. So Chef makes it really easy for us to install and configure softwares like this with such an ease that makes writing cookbooks very easy. And we are less dependent on writing manual scripts, which are error prone.
Yeah, that was a great example. I mean, I can't even imagine how many tickets that must help you to resolve faster, and maybe even some tickets you would never get to at all without that type of power. As you were doing that, I was wondering, now that you've been using it for a while, now that you've had it out in the field, had users actually experiencing it, either expected or unexpected, what do you feel like the biggest value that you've derived from using the product is so far? And do you have any plans of extension or expansion?
Well, the biggest value the Chef has added as a tool to our company is, well, I'll say it's consistency and ease of usage. Earlier, when we were writing scripts, a lot of manual work was involved. So most of the teams were spending most of their time in writing the scripts and testing them out across the systems. So we are no longer doing that with Chef right now. We have a lot of time available, which we can use in doing some other thing, mostly related to system admin. But Chef has helped us a lot of in ways to reduce our manual effort, because now we are no longer writing scripts. The second is the consistency. Earlier with scripting, there was no consistency across our systems. But now with Chef, I can say that we have consistent configuration across our systems, which may be which are spread across multiple locations of our office. As far as the usage goes, we see ourselves using more and more of Chef in the coming days or in future. There is this one feature which is CIS benchmarking. I can use the Chef to benchmark my systems. We will be looking into that. We are going in that direction where we will be making our servers and desktops as CIS benchmarked, as well as the our cloud setups also.
That's awesome. Always glad to see people finding more usability and more functionality in the system. And I'm also really glad to hear that sort of met your expectations, right? At the top, you talked about how you really, consistency was a big thing for you. And after deploying it, it delivered on that promise for you and your environment.
Yeah, I think I'm good. Shubham, you've given a comprehensive view of how you're using Chef, and it was really nice to see the demo and everything. So yeah, I'm good.